In a farmhouse outside Intercourse, Pennsylvania, a woman who turned 67 last March wakes up every morning and does the same thing she has done since she was 19. No alarm clock, no phone, and no serum that costs $90 a bottle. Yet the quality of her skin, the tension in it, the way it holds light, is the thing that stopped a visiting nurse in her tracks 2 years ago and made her ask, out loud, what this woman was using. The nurse had been in dermatology for over a decade. She had seen every cream, every peel, every laser consultation. She was not easily surprised. And she was surprised. That gap between what the modern beauty industry tells women their skin can do after 60 and what certain communities have quietly been doing for generations is exactly what this channel exists to close. What you are about to hear is not a product recommendation. It is not a DIY recipe. It is a documented pattern, one that researchers, rural physicians, and a handful of very honest dermatologists have been circling around for years without saying the obvious thing plainly. So let me say it plainly. There is an overnight ritual practiced in Old Order Amish households across Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio, that addresses skin tension, moisture retention, and barrier repair in a way that the modern skincare industry spent decades either ignoring or actively obscuring, because the core of it costs almost nothing and cannot be patented. The methods I am about to share are inspired by traditional practices of Old Order Amish communities in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and Holmes County, Ohio. I want to be precise about that because it matters. These are not invented traditions. They are documented behaviors passed from grandmother to granddaughter in communities that rejected synthetic chemistry, not as a wellness trend, but as a theological conviction. And that distinction changes everything. When a community chooses simplicity out of genuine belief, not marketing, the things they keep tend to be the things that actually work. Ineffective traditions get quietly abandoned. Nobody writes a press release about it. The knowledge just narrows. What survives has earned its survival. So what is the ritual? It begins at dusk, not at bedtime. That timing is not incidental. The skin's repair cycle, specifically the process by which skin cells regenerate and the barrier replenishes, its lipid layer runs on a biological clock that accelerates roughly between 9 in the evening and 2 in the morning. This is not folk belief. This is circadian biology, documented in peer-reviewed dermatology research over the last 30 years. The Amish did not know the phrase circadian rhythm, but they figured out the window, and they started preparing the skin before it opened, not during it. The first layer is a cleaning practice that most modern women would find almost confrontational in its simplicity. No foam, no micellar water, no pH balanced gel with 17 ingredients on the back panel. The traditional Amish practice involves a warm cloth, just a cotton cloth, soaked in warm water used in slow, deliberate passes across the face and neck. The warmth dilates the pores temporarily. The friction is mechanical but gentle. The effect is something a facialist charges you for, a basic physical loosening of the debris layer that accumulates throughout the day. What happens next is where the real science lives. Before sleep, Amish women in these communities apply a single ingredient fat, most commonly rendered tallow from grass-fed cattle, though some households use a cold-pressed plant oil, most often sunflower or olive oil, pressed locally in a very thin layer across the face, neck, and the skin just below the jawline. That last area, the submandibular zone, is almost universally skipped in modern skincare routines and is almost universally the first place that shows what aging really looks like. The fat is the delivery mechanism, but what it is delivering is the point. Tallow, particularly from grass-fed animals, carries a lipid profile that is structurally very close to human sebum, the oil our own skin produces. As women move through their 50s and 60s, sebum production drops sharply. The skin becomes drier, not just on the surface, but at the barrier level, the outermost architecture of the skin that determines how much water escapes overnight and how elastic the tissue feels in the morning. When you replace that lost lipid with something the skin recognizes chemically, the barrier responds, not as a metaphor. Literally, the transepidermal water loss, the technical phrase for moisture evaporating out of skin while you sleep, decreases measurably. Now, let me tell you why you have probably never heard this framed this way from a mainstream source. And I want to give you the actual record, not a feeling. Here is the number that changes everything. Between 1938 and 2022, the United States Food and Drug Administration made no substantial update to its framework for regulating cosmetic ingredients. 84 years. The law governing what goes on your face was written before the invention of television and was not meaningfully revised until the Modernization of Cosmetics Regulation Act passed in late 2022. What that means in practice is that for 84 years, the industry largely regulated itself, and the mechanism of that self-regulation has a name. The Cosmetic Ingredient Review Panel was established in 1976 and is funded by the Personal Care Products Council, which is the industry's own trade association. The panel reviews cosmetic ingredients for safety. Its findings are advisory. It has no enforcement power. Over its history, it has reviewed more than 4,000 ingredients. The companies whose products contain those ingredients are not legally required to act on its conclusions. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a structural fact, and it is publicly documented. In that environment, what got rewarded was not efficacy. What got rewarded was novelty. A new peptide complex that could be patented. A biofermented, something that justified a $140 price point. A clinical sounding suffix attached to a marketing claim that the FTC technically could challenge but rarely did with any speed. The modern skincare market for women over 50 became, and I am choosing this word deliberately, an extraction economy. Not a wellness economy, an extraction economy. Your anxiety was the raw material, the product was the invoice. Single ingredient animal and plant fats were not part of that economy. They could not be patented. A jar of rendered tallow does not lend itself to a subscription model. There was no margin in telling a 58-year-old woman that what her skin actually needed was something her great-grandmother kept in a clay pot on a shelf, so nobody told her. There's a woman in Sugar Creek, Ohio, in the heart of Holmes County, who I want you to picture clearly. She is 63 years old. She has 8 children and has worked outdoors in a garden, in the cold, in direct summer sun for most of her adult life. The outdoor exposure alone should have aged her skin significantly by conventional dermatology's predictions. She has been using rendered tallow as her only nighttime skin application for over 40 years. She spends roughly $4 a month on it, pressed from animals raised on her own property. When a relative visiting from Columbus asked her what she used, this relative being someone who spent close to $200 a month on a skincare line, she did not understand the question at first. She thought she was being asked about soap. When she understood, she said simply, "We just never stopped." That sentence is the whole story. Now, I want to be honest with you about something, because this channel does not deal in perfect solutions and you deserve a straight answer. This practice does not erase existing damage. If you have spent decades with chronic sun exposure and the visible result is significant textural damage or deep static lines that do not soften when your face is relaxed, no single ingredient overnight application is going to reverse that. What is documented is this. Consistent barrier repair slows further degradation, improves moisture retention, and can reduce the visibility of fine lines that are caused by dryness and barrier breakdown rather than structural collagen loss. Those are 2 different categories of aging. This method addresses one of them very well and the other one very little. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you something. There is also a specific caveat for women who have rosacea or certain forms of reactive skin. Dense occlusive fats and tallow is occlusive can in some cases trap heat in skin that is already inflamed. If your skin runs red, reactive, and hot to the touch, this particular application deserves a conversation with a dermatologist before you try it. The broader ritual, the warm cloth cleanse, the timing, the intentionality of working with the skin's own nocturnal cycle, those elements stand on their own and carry no such caution. What the Amish preserved, they did not invent. That point matters because it removes any temptation to treat this as regional folklore rather than convergent human knowledge. Ancient Roman women used olive oil as a primary skin treatment, applied before sleep, often mixed with beeswax for a thicker consistency. Egyptian cosmetic practice going back to roughly 3,000 years before the Common Era involved animal fats as the base for almost every skin preparation. Japanese women in the Heian period, roughly 1,000 years ago, used camellia oil applied to the face and neck as part of a formalized evening ritual that persists in modified form in Japanese skincare culture. To this day, Ayurvedic medicine in the Indian tradition developed the concept of abhyanga, the deliberate application of warm oil to the skin, as a therapeutic practice documented for over 2,000 years with specific reference to skin aging and barrier maintenance. These cultures did not know each other's methods. They arrived at the same structural conclusion through different roads, that the skin at night needs fat, needs warmth, needs time, and needs to be left alone. The Amish did not discover this. They simply never stopped doing it when the industry told everyone else to buy something newer. If you have watched this far, I want to ask you something directly. Where did you grow up, and did your mother or grandmother have a skin practice that nobody ever explained to you, something she just did without a brand name attached to it? Leave that in the comments. I read them, and the pattern in what women write there has shaped more of this channel's direction than any algorithm. And here is the second question, the one I think about more. Was there a moment when you realized that what you were being sold was not what you needed? Not a bad product, not a scam. In the legal sense, just something designed for a problem you did not actually have at a price you were told you had to pay. If this channel feels like it belongs to you, if the woman who reads labels, asks questions, and believes that real knowledge has been quietly sidelined to protect someone else's margin sounds like someone you recognize in the mirror, then you already know what to do. The next video in this series examines something that will surprise you. In 1958, a chemical compound that the fragrance industry had used freely in products marketed specifically to women was flagged internally by a major trade association as a potential endocrine disruptor. The report was not published. The compound remained in products for decades. I have the name of the association, the year of the internal memo, and the category of products it was concentrated in. That video goes further than anything I have covered